Now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker for this session, Ellen Burns-Johnson. Ellen is an award-winning learning experience designer and strategist with over a decade of experience in L&D. She's also a game designer, podcaster, agile practitioner, and innovation evangelist. As a lead learning strategist at ELB Learning, Ellen guides how team members across the company think about learning, organizational psychology, and technology. Ellen, we're so excited to have you here today, and the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Emma. It's good to be back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab the screen share for a moment, actually probably for a good chunk of time. Here we go. All right, can everyone see a title screen? All right, I'm seeing yeses in the chat. Excellent. Okay, so really great to be here. Really great to see where everyone's joining from. Looks like we have quite the global group today. Feeling very privileged to have some of your attention on a very busy day. What games do I develop? I've developed, let's see, 2 examples are a game about a ferret in space and a game about remashing words and weird phrases. You can find me on LinkedIn. We can talk more. Today in this session, we're not talking about games. We're going to be talking about AI. We have some polls. We'll have a lot of interaction in the chat. Q&A panel, if you have specific questions that you want to ask that you don't want to get lost in the chat feed, make sure you remember that Q&A panel. We're going to share lots of facts and statistics and links and so on and so forth. We're going to do some large group brainstorming. And the goal of today is I want us to come away from this conversation with a stronger sense of direction and some sparks of inspiration about what's next for us, right? Obviously, you can't go online and read about business without seeing the words AI plastered everywhere. And certainly a lot of the conversations, if not all of the conversations during today's Leader Talk sessions are kind of centered on AI. But what does that mean? And that's kind of what I want to focus on today, not just what can it let us do, but what do we do with those results? Okay, so to kick things off, I want to get just a sense of kind of where everyone's coming from in terms of your organization. So first poll for today, I want to ask everyone how you would describe your organization's current approach to AI. So we've got the first poll up right now in the poll panel. Go ahead and grab your answer. First option, we have no AI strategy. We know it's out there. We're kind of just figuring it out. Maybe you're a little more advanced than that. You're experimenting with AI, but you're not really doing it in any structured way. You're not necessarily forming hypotheses and testing use cases. You're just kind of sending out some feelers and trying to get a sense of the space. If you're a little more mature with your AI adoption, you might have some specific initiatives aligned with your business goals to see if AI can help you in that specific way. And then if you're very mature with AI, then it's become a core part of your strategy and your operations. It's, all over your organization, serving multiple roles and kind of accelerating everybody. Let's keep the poll open for another few seconds, and then we'll kind of just see where everyone is. Again, this is just to kind of set the stage for today. There's no right answer, right? Every organization is on their own journey, just like us as individuals. Okay, Emma, let's close the poll and see what we've got for results. Okay, great. So it looks like the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, but a good majority of you in today's session are in that second category, right? You're experimenting with AI, but not in a structured way. You haven't quite got to level 3 yet, but we do have some folks in the kind of the third level. We have some AI initiatives aligned with business goals. And then we also do have a small minority who are kind of incorporating AI as a core part of your organization's strategy and operations. If you're in that first group, no big deal. You're in good company. Certainly there's a lot of opportunity, and we'll go into some of those opportunities today. But my hope is at the end of the session, you'll have a stronger sense of where you want to move to. Okay, so now let's go to the second poll that I wanted to ask you guys to answer, and that is more about the L&D maturity. So this is a different angle. And if you're seeing the screen, you're seeing kind of a stairway with 4 different levels. We've got reactive, managed, strategic, and predictive. This is an L&D maturity model. It's the one that I prefer to use, created by Cognota. And they have a pretty robust assessment tool that you can go on their website and take. It has a bunch of questions that you answer, and then it kind of gives you the results about where your organization is in terms of its L&D functions maturity. We're not going to do the whole evaluation right now. I'm mostly just asking you to take a look at these different stages and respond in the poll what you think your L&D maturity is as an organization. The reason I'm asking this is because I think AI is going to enable us to do more in the upper levels faster than if we didn't have AI. And we'll talk about specific examples and what that actually looks like and what's required to make that happen throughout today's session. Okay, so we've got reactive, managed, strategic, and predictive. Those are the 4 different levels. Level 1 is a lower maturity. Level 4 is a higher maturity. Let's close that poll. It disappeared. Okay, a much more even split. That's interesting. Okay, great. So we have about 30% in reactive. That's level 1. We have managed, is the bulk of our respondents today. The bulk of you are in level 2 organizations where it's managed. You have some vision and accountability, but maybe still a little siloed. Strategic, that's level 3, about 28%. You're seen as a trusted advisor. You've got some ROI measurement and impact. And then predictive is, okay, we're using what we've got to actually kind of set the business strategy and see where the workforce will need to be. And we're trying to help move towards that. So that's another small majority of us today, about 5%. Great. Okay. So this just helps me get context for where we all are. All right, let's move on from the polls for a second. I want to just talk briefly and kind of introduce myself a little bit more. As Emma mentioned, I'm VP of Learning Strategy at ELB Learning. ELB Learning, we aim to be a single source provider of learning-powered business solutions. So we do it all, from learning experience design to development to staff augmentation and strategic consulting. In my role, I'm kind of the product owner of learning strategy solutions. So that is program design, curriculum design, environmental analysis, task analysis. Those are the services that I help oversee from a product perspective. What we're sharing today is going to be coming from our insights into leading high-performance organizations, as well as recent studies and industry publications. So there are going to be a lot of links and resources that I reference in the session. You will get access to the slides. The slides will have the links in the appendix. You'll have all the sources that I use to come up with today's statistics and facts, and you'll be able to dig into those in depth on your own when you get access to the slides. Go ham. Okay. So the title of today's session, as you know, is AI working for you? How to make time for what drives value. There are obvious wins, right? I think we have all heard stories about efficiency and productivity, making things better, faster, cheaper. I also want to talk about the less obvious wins, and that's where we kind of talk about those that level of L&D maturity, right? Can we move from just thinking about efficiency to actually moving to innovation, right? How does efficiency enable us to think about innovation differently and spend more time on those activities? And then the third piece is, okay, now that we have more time to spend on those high value, innovation-oriented activities, what kind of culture do we need to have in place to make sure we do that without causing big problems? And so these are the pieces that I want to discuss today. And we will do a little bit more brainstorming towards the end, and I will share a little bit more about what we're going to do with that brainstorming when we get there. Okay. So, just like we saw kind of in the results of that first poll, a lot of us organizationally are towards the beginning of these levels, right? We either have no AI strategy yet, or we're experimenting with it, but not in a structured way. There are actual tangible benefits that AI is delivering today to some organizations. We've seen the news, like I mentioned, you can't go online without seeing it, right? And just like I expected to see in the poll results, most of us are starting with experimenting around efficiency and productivity. So those are what I call the obvious wins. When most people think about AI in business, the first thing that comes to mind is speed, faster workflows. We're talking about fewer manual tasks, making work faster, making work more efficient, better, less expensive. Before we really dive into what we can do with that extra time, I do want to just touch on how AI is doing that in a few different use cases. So these can kind of fall into three broad categories, and these categories come from IBM. You can see I've linked there at the bottom of the page. Artificial intelligence, when we talk about artificial intelligence, I think we're generally using it kind of as an umbrella term to talk about a lot of different things. But the way that IBM talks about it, artificial intelligence is about analyzing massive amounts of data to find patterns and insights. You can process large amounts of data way faster with large language models than you can by just going through things manually. So that's one category. Another category is business process management. That means you're using AI tools to streamline operations, to boost agility, to boost efficiency. That's, making sure things are connected, making sure people have quick access to information so that they can make decisions quickly. That's more about business processes intelligence. And finally, robotic processes automation. So these are your bots, right? If you probably have a bot on your website, users who are just coming to your website and have kind of those surface level questions can interact with that bot and get some questions without necessarily taking up a human's time with the same questions over and over again. But that bot per se can communicate in conversational language now. So I've still experienced the phone trees that do not understand what I mean. Hopefully those go away quickly and we can have more conversational interactions with these computers and get what we need a little bit faster and more efficient. So together, these three pieces, they create a powerful system for scaling productivity: artificial intelligence, making sense of big data, business process management, making sure things are connected so we can get accurate, timely information to make good decisions, and robotic process automation to make sure that we are spending our time on the higher value activities, not necessarily just making sure the buttons are buttoned up, the pieces are just put in the right place. We want to take a look at the big picture. To give you some specific examples, and there are a lot of sources here, which I've put in the appendix, and those links will be there when you get the slides. Some examples from a few different industries: customer support, examples of it increasing productivity by 14%. That's customer support where it has coaching in the back end. 40% performance improvements compared with workers who don't use it in kind of regular office jobs. Programmers, of course, are a really big use case, and there's a lot of discussion about how AI is improving productivity with programmers. I think it was Nielsen Norman Group who did a study where they found that programmers who used AI could code 126% more projects per week. You can look at the source in the links that we send. So there are a lot of studies, there are a lot of use cases where productivity has been increased through AI tools by measurable amounts. Fantastic. Okay, not particularly surprised. If we've used anything just off the shelf like ChatGPT to write an email, it can go a lot faster if you do that. If you're doing something that needs to have a lot of heart behind it, maybe you still take more time to do it. Maybe you're still doing it a little bit more by hand, but there's a different purpose, right? A little different purpose if you're trying to write a letter to your grandma or write a card to your niece versus sending a business email where you just need to get accurate information out there quickly. Okay. Again, yes, the slides will be shared by training industry, and the appendix has links to all the sources. So moving on from these specific kind of general examples, I now want to know a little bit more about how you all are using AI. But I do want us to think a little bit more categorically about how we're deploying it. So I'm not necessarily interested in, the use cases specifically in the poll. If you have specific use cases, great, put them in the chat. But the poll is asking, okay, where are you deploying AI to enhance performance in your organization? And I want to put Addie up here because it's, in L&D, it's kind of how our brains are structured, right? You might be deploying AI to do some of that large data analysis. You might be using AI to do some ideation and some prototyping. Certainly, there are a lot of AI integrations in the development and production space. Implementation, you might be using that to do customized learning. A case is being conducted. You might be doing a more adaptive learning pathways with implementation. And of course, you might be, again, using the evaluation to do kind of that large language or the large data set analysis. Okay, this is the last poll. Okay, I'm glad to see Kelly chose A, D, and D if the poll had allowed it. So all of the above, that's great. Glad to see it. Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like this. Okay, it's great to see what people are using this in multiple different ways. And I'm also really not surprised to see that. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, development and implementation. Very good. Okay. So when I'm thinking development and implementation, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you're probably using it for image generation, maybe some programming, maybe you're using it to source some assets, voiceover, special effects or sound effects, so on and so forth. Okay, fantastic. All right, let's close the poll. Okay, so keeping in mind, we had a few people in chat point out that they're using it for all of the above. We are seeing a lot of, I think mostly in design and prototyping and development and production, a little bit more in design and prototyping than in development and production than at least I expected to see. Not as much in analysis that I expected. And I'm not really surprised to see kind of low numbers in evaluation because as we all know, it's really sometimes very difficult to get to that evaluation step. Okay. That was the last poll of the day. Let's continue on. So yes, we're using it to realize productivity, but this is where I kind of want to take the conversation next, is that productivity is not a goal in and of itself, right? You can do more with the time you have, but what does that allow us to do? What does improved productivity mean in the big, in the big picture? What are the implications? What does that improved productivity allow us to do differently? So if you've been out there on the Twitterverse, I still use Twitter because I just can't change my brain that way. But really what I mean by social media is you might have seen this particular quote that I'm sharing on screen kind of shared across a few different networks. And this is something that I think was said with a little bit of snarkiness, but maybe a good thing to think about. And this quote is, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. So my stance on this is not that AI can replace inherently human activities like art. I don't think that AI can necessarily do art. Yeah, Lynette says she loves that quote. I do like that. I'd propose that art is not a product. It's an inherently human activity. And image generation can be done by AI, but art has to involve a human. Maybe you can make the argument that there are AI-enabled art activities. That's fine. But my stance here is that AI cannot replace inherently human activities, and art is one of those things. It's not the only one, though, and that's what we're going to start talking about for the rest of the session. I want us to think about how we can start shifting the emphasis of what AI can do in terms of automation and producing deliverables to how we can use that work of automation and producing deliverables to support a shift in our resources and thinking towards fundamentally human activities. That's things involving social dynamics, patterns of behavior, and culture. Yes, exactly. Tamara mentioned it allows L&D to spend more time on finally being proactive and strategic. Yay, yes, exactly. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's move on to the second session, right? Second session here, the less obvious wins. Got it. Productivity, automation, check, makes sense to everybody. Let's move on to innovation. Let's move on from efficiency to innovation. The real shift happens when AI frees us up to focus on bigger, more creative, and more strategic work. So let's think about this a little bit in terms of our L&D maturity, right? The lower maturity relies more on those traditional metrics, completion rates, learner satisfaction surveys. It's easier to get that data now. It's easier to interpret that data. You can also then start focusing on getting more enhanced metrics, your real-time engagement tracking. Maybe definitely you want to be looking at your behavioral insights, the application of learning. Are you actually changing people's performance on the job? What are they doing differently? Personalized learning pathways is something that's really connected with AI conversations in L&D right now. Learning styles might not be a thing, but learning preferences are, and certainly a person's preferences are going to shift as their context shifts. So AI enables us to be more flexible in meeting learners where they are. And because of the capabilities of AI to help us with big data, it really does help us link investments in L&D, that's programs and projects, to organizational objectives. There's going to be data around organizational objectives, finance data, marketing data, sales data. We can tap into that data more easily now and connect it with the things that we're doing in the L&D space. So if you want to, optional thing for chat, go ahead and type in some of the things that might be getting in the way of maturing your L&D. And I'm going to move on from this slide because we have a lot to get through throughout the rest of the session. But if you have some things that are getting in the way of maturing your L&D, I'm really curious to hear about them. So feel free to just kind of toss that into the chat over the next 2 slides as we get there. Luther just mentioned upper level support, lack of resources to buy tools, right? So to enable your actual work. Team of 2, yes, okay. Support from leadership. Oh, I know, these are the themes, right? Time and resources are always limitations in maturing L&D. Yes. Small businesses. Yep. Got to start somewhere. Building a culture of learning. Okay, Jenna, that's where we're headed, right? Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing out in various industries about how AI is enabling elevated focus. So leading organizations are reinvesting that AI generated time savings into these high impact activities. That's creative problem solving, it's collaboration, it's mentorship. Creative problem solving, collaboration, mentorship, those are human activities, right? Yes, you can have a conversation, a mentorship style coaching conversation with an AI, but you're the only one having an emotional experience with that. And you might not even be getting there, right? You can't actually have an emotional connection, a two-way connection with an AI. You can only have that with another human. So calling back to kind of the examples we discussed in that first section, let's think about the implications of some of these realizations, right? Customer support increased productivity by 14%. What does that mean for our customer support agents? They increase productivity by 14%. Does that mean they're able to get through more calls? Maybe that means they are able to take a little bit more time with some of those calls and be a little bit more present with their customers, so their customers don't feel like they're interacting with humans that are just trying to be robots. 40% improvement compared with workers who don't use it. Let's look at maybe content generation, 113% increase in blog production from an e-commerce platform. Listen, I don't read a lot of e-commerce blogs. There are probably some people who do. That strategy is going to be in their hands. But if you have 113% increase in production, then maybe you can be thinking more strategically. What content's actually doing well? What are the trends? And while this is particularly a marketing example, I think the same kind of patterns can apply to L&D, right? If we're able to get some of those low, easily automated tasks out there, what does that allow us to do differently? Where can we capture some of that time back? Yes. Yep. I think Sarah makes a really good point. The challenge with that is leadership sees productivity gains as allowing support to take on more clients, not necessarily spend more time with current clients, usually in your experience. Yeah. And I think it really depends on the organization, right? I mean, if your organization is really focused on getting people through that funnel and their numbers in terms of customer satisfaction look good, it's probably going to be hard to make that case. But if you're able to tap into both pieces of data and make that comparison, that's where the insights can really come from, is where you're comparing those different points of data saying, okay, we're doing well here, we could do more, but what if we did more here? And those are the kinds of conversations that I hope L&D is able to participate in and actually drive more and more in the future. So here are a couple more examples of that elevated focus. Here's one example when it comes to research, right? AI automates the analysis of literature, doing review of data, generating hypotheses, processing these vast data sets way faster than a squishy human brain can. That enables our analysts, and L&D, we're going to be analysts too. We do it all, right? But that enables analysts to reallocate some of that time from manual data processing to strategic planning, higher level analysis. Another shift, way easier to create first drafts of various types of content. I believe many of you are probably experimenting with that or already have incorporated this into your workflow for creating materials. You can move content creation from production to more of that high value strategic planning, hopefully looking at that data more. actually using metrics to drive our approach, being a little bit more agile and real time in the way that we're implementing material for learners and our different learning strategies to enable, performance. Last one, I love this, meeting transcriptions. I know it's such a stereotype. You join a meeting now and like everyone's robot joins as well and everyone's taking notes, but it's so fascinating to look at the data that comes from that. And one of the things that's most powerful for me isn't even the notes, right? The transcripts are great. It's that you can see a breakdown of who's been speaking the most. And that's so fascinating, especially from a coaching perspective. So coaching more junior colleagues, all right, let's have you run this meeting. Okay, let's look at the breakdown. Do you think this is an appropriate reflection of how much each person should have talked? Well, this was a conversation with the client where you needed feedback and you talked for 30% of the time. Is that appropriate? You don't think so? What should we do differently next time? Right. So there's just a lot of more data that you can use to frame up coaching conversations to increase performance in a lot of different ways. And that's what I mean by AI being able to kind of accelerate this process of maturity. Is it going to be the same prescription for every single organization? Absolutely not. It is entirely a different journey for every individual learning professional. It's an entirely different journey for every organization. But if we have a sense of what the terrain can look like, this is what I'm hoping will inspire us to push forward and try to use AI to capture some of these opportunities to elevate conversations and elevate our own practice to something that's more mature. Tamika asked, will participants receive the recording for these sessions? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, thanks, Emma. Great. Okay, before I kind of transition to the last section, and again, we'll have Q&A afterwards, I want to ask everyone to think about this phrase that has kind of entered the public consciousness, and that is move fast and break things. That move fast and break things phrase, I think, is originally attributed to Mark Zuckerberg of Meta. And he used it in a kind of as an internal motto at Facebook during its early days. And that was intended to signify a culture of prioritizing rapid innovation and development, even if it meant occasionally making mistakes by breaking things in the process. So the idea wasn't it's, fine to just burn everything to the ground every day in the interest of experimentation. It was a motto that tried to get people to think, okay, I'm not going to try to break everything, but I don't need to get it 100% right every time because we have the flexibility to adjust, to roll back, and to learn from the mistakes to enable us to move forward even faster than if we waited to make sure everything was checked off before we actually did a soft launch or something like that. So I'm not just a categorical proponent of breaking things, but I do think it's interesting to think about this phrase as it relates to AI. Go break some eggs. Yes. I like that. A test and learn model that's a bit less destructive. Yes, I like that better. Test and learn. AI is an enabler of that test and learn approach. That kind of super productivity that it enables is something that we can use to do faster experimentation. It doesn't really feel as onerous, or it doesn't feel as difficult to do a small prototype that we can test with a small group of learners or a small group of stakeholders, because it doesn't take that much time to put something together now in a prototype form. So you can put something together in a few hours, run it by a few stakeholders in a half an hour session, and now you've learned something and you can go fold it back into your process or tweak it some more and test again. It really just reduces the cost, kind of the opportunity cost of doing this test and learn approach in L&D. The thing is, if you adopt a test and learn approach, you don't necessarily get the most out of it, and therefore you won't necessarily get the most out of AI without the right type of culture, because that fail forward mentality requires certain prerequisites, or it can be destructive, to use the phrase that we got from chat. So that brings me to kind of the last pillar of the thesis today, right? It's about people more than process, because processes can change. Obviously, people can change too. But really, if we're investing in people the right way, then they can help us create the right processes and continue to refine them as we continue to learn. AI can help optimize processes, but it is people who drive real transformation. That matters more than ever. And that's where real business value comes from, right? It's how people relate with one another. It's how people relate with the world. And that's where fundamentally value comes from. So I want to look at a couple different perspectives on this. And I want to share these with you because I think there are some really strong themes that cut across these different ways of thinking through culture. The first is the famous manifesto for agile software development. It's been around for a while. Here's the manifesto. We've linked the manifesto and we've linked the principles behind the manifesto, which are also worth a read. So this is, very, very simple. It's about testing and learning. I think one of the most powerful phrases in the Agile Manifesto is, while there is value on the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration, responding to change, etc. If we tweak this a little bit and make it more for agile learning development, then we're thinking about enabling learning by doing it and helping others do it. And through that work, we come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. I love speaking with SMEs. I hate having to schedule SME calls. It's always a nightmare. But when I actually get to talk to someone who really loves what they do and has a ton to share about how it's done, it's an incredibly empowering and energizing conversation. And I bet most of you feel the same way. Working solutions over comprehensive documentation. Documentation is important. We value the items on the right. We value the items on the left more. Real solutions, real powerful learning experiences that engage people in a meaningful way. Great. Customer collaboration. Maybe that's stakeholder collaboration. Maybe that's learner collaboration over contract negotiation. Let's build things that learners like, that they use, that helps them over just checking things off a box. And then, of course, responding to change over following a plan. And that's a whole webinar in and of itself. So this is just my take on tweaking the Agile Manifesto so that it's oriented more towards learning development. And that's just one example. So let's put that on the shelf for now, put it in our working memory. And now let's look at a different model. Thinking about engagement culture, thinking about innovation culture, self-determination theory. You might be familiar with this. It's pretty simple. It's pretty elegant. But the idea is that to really get people to be motivated in regards to a specific task or a specific job. People are motivated, engaged when they have control over their work and the freedom to make meaningful decisions. Okay, competence. We thrive when we feel capable, when we can continuously develop our skills and see progress in our work. And then relatedness, a strong sense of connection and belonging with colleagues fosters collaboration, trust, and motivation. Different model, sensing some themes here, right? We value individuals' interactions over processes and tools. Customer collaboration. Oh, that sounds like relatedness. Okay, I hope that you're seeing some themes here. Last one I want to highlight is actually, there's two more I want to highlight. I wanted to bring this one up because it's one of my favorite nonfiction books. And if you haven't read it, it's a pretty quick read. And it's very narrative, really, really fun to read, great stories. It is a true story of a captain who took over the worst performing nuclear submarine in the US Navy, and within a year turned it into the best performing one. And there are certain principles that this captain, David Marquette, co-created with his staff on that submarine that kind of ended up governing how they all worked together on that boat. Empowered leadership, right? So treat everyone as leaders, not just followers, by giving them the authority to make decisions based on their expertise. Delegation of control, move authority to where the information is rather than moving information up to an authority figure. Competence building, continuously develop skills. I bet you're seeing the themes now. A couple more themes and principles from this particular story. Ensure everyone understands the organizations and expectations clearly. Clarity of purpose. That goes along with building a culture of trust and respect, recognizing and rewarding positive behavior promptly to reinforce desired actions. And then, of course, continuous improvement. There's another phrase that isn't part of these principles, but it is from the book that I just love, and it's embrace the inspectors. When the inspectors come in to check your work, ask them how you're doing. ask what they've seen in other organizations, embrace the inspectors and learn from them because it helps you get better. And if you continue that pattern over a long period of time, you can't help but become excellent. I really like that quote, Asim. Plans should be made by the people who are going to execute them. Yes, they should definitely be involved for sure. Okay, so we're seeing some themes, right? Yep. And just to call out, we are nearing the end of the session. We've got a little bit less than 10 minutes left. So if you do have big questions you want me to answer, pop them in the Q&A panel. I see we have a few up there now, and I'll make sure to get to those in the next few minutes. Okay. So you might have heard something about power skills. These are also, I think, the more outdated or less preferred term is soft skills, but they're being referred to as power skills now. I'm fine with both. I don't have a strong preference. The idea here is that, yes, okay, thematically, looking at the big picture and what we've seen today, AI can handle automation. It can help us accelerate. It can help us refocus our time on higher value activities. But to make the most of that time, we have to recognize that high stake decision-making still remains in our squishy hands. It's still a human domain. And shaping organizational decision-making, which is something that L&D can do and can be responsible for, requires relationships with humans. And therefore, all these social soft skills or power skills that are listed on the screen right now become even more important as the work world progresses. So as we continue experimenting and actually start, integrating AI systematically into our organizations, those power skills are going to become even more important because you're not going to be spending time putting data into spreadsheets. You're going to be spending more time discussing what those spreadsheets mean with other people. Okay. So last few minutes, and while we are doing this, I am going to answer some of the questions in the Q&A panel. But while we are doing the Q&A panel as well, I'd like to tap into our crowdsourcing brain and do a really big brainstorm together. So here's how this is gonna run. I'd like you all to think of one small initiative you can test during the next month. So pick one of the 3 things that are on screen. Do an AI-powered process to improve efficiency and productivity. Maybe that's using AI to do some crowdsourcing like this. Maybe it's a way for you to refocus your time on higher value activities now that you've integrated AI into some of your processes. An exercise to cultivate innovation culture in your team with your customers and stakeholders. So I'm not necessarily interested in knowing what you're going to do. Give me an example. Tell me what you're going to do. Make a small commitment to the rest of us, but also share your ideas for what you might be able to try so that the rest of the folks who are here today can learn from those ideas. And then here's what we're going to do. If you can crowdsource all your answers in chat, I will grab that chat log, which will be shared along with the presentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that chat log and I'm going to feed it through an AI and help us synthesize any trends in the responses. So if you're kind of thinking through your ideas, take the next minute or so, a couple minutes, to think about something that you can do in category 1, 2, or 3 here, and put your ideas in the chat so that we can feed it into that AI. And everyone else can learn from it as well. Okay, taking a quick break for a drink of water while I review the questions in the Q&A panel. Okay. All right, if you're thinking of a number, yeah, prioritizing that backlog. I love that. Ooh, I really, really, really like that a lot. Oh, you can do so much with that. Yeah, AI-powered process to improve efficiency and productivity. Oh man, there's a lot you could do with prioritizing the backlog. You could take that backlog and you could send it out for more of a survey. You could take existing surveys or posts in Slack and then use that to interpret the results of the backlog in a way that helps you prioritize things more. I really, really do like that. Okay, if you're typing in a number, follow up with an actual idea. If you're going to do an AI-powered process to improve efficiency and productivity, tell us what that idea is. Yeah, okay. Have AI create project plans and timelines and focus more of the time on defining and aligning scope. Oh, I love that so much, right? If AI can create the project plan for you, you can think about how you're going to explain that or what specific things you might want to highlight more. You can spend more time thinking about how you're going to explain it to your specific customer. I really like these ideas. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Okay, to answer some of the questions in the Q&A panel, we have one from Greg. There are great AI tools, but many come with an added cost that companies are not ready to pay for. How do we mature? Can we mature without the added cost? I think the answer is yes. And also, it depends, right? It depends on what kind of organization you're working with. But even going into the free version of ChatGPT, you can paste things in and get a lot of value back. But it does depend on kind of where you are now, right? So if you're thinking about AI in terms of content development or accelerating, multimedia production, it might not be as easy to do. If you're thinking about using AI to do some analysis, that might be something you can do right away, just using off-the-shelf free versions of the tools that are out there. Okay, so is there an AI tool that can review data from spreadsheets and pull in graphs and bring up questions and trends? I'm curious if anyone in the chat has a specific answer. I typically am using just kind of the enterprise version of ChatGPT for a lot of my work. But when it comes to reviewing data from spreadsheets, I think I'd want to, depending on the data, I'd probably want to invest in something a little bit more tailor-made. And I think Copilot is probably one of the good ones right now. I'm curious if there are any. Oh, yeah. Okay. Heather mentioned the newest model of Claude is great for that. Oh, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Heather. I haven't used Claude a ton, but I do know AI practitioners who just love Claude. It's really great for technical tasks. People are using it for programming. And Heather just mentioned in chat that it's really great for reviewing data from spreadsheets and pulling in graphs, bringing up questions and trends. So give Claude a try. And then, yeah, as Gennaro and Emma mentioned, Copilot works in Excel as well. Okay. Kelly said, what is the role of an emotional response in the effectiveness of coaching? Ooh, what is the role of an emotional response in customer service leading to increased revenue? Any research on how AI and AI agents or even bots can be designed and programmed to leverage emotional response to increase service and revenue? I don't have anything offhand. There might be some things that are mentioned in the sources. I do know, and I can't remember offhand what it is, that there are some tools out there that are starting to explore that. Being able to try to test, suss out what a caller or user's emotional state is, and then be able to moderate their response or their recommendations based on the perceived emotional state. I think, if I'm remembering correctly from my reading, this actually is something that's being done maybe in more of a K-12 setting in research. So that's not particularly helpful for you, Kelly, but it might give you an idea of where to search. Where you can find a little bit more. Obviously, it doesn't have much to do with service and revenue, but it might be enough for you to get some good ideas sparked. Okay, Aaron says, never mind. Okay, noted. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, what AI tool will I use to summarize or prioritize all our answers? I'll just use ChatGPT. I use just enterprise ChatGPT. I'll just grab this huge stack of text, put it in there and say, I want you to look at this chat, analyze what questions people have, and then I'll do some follow-up analysis and ask it to identify themes in terms of what people are going to be doing with their time, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. What are some ideas, and what are some themes of what those ideas are going to be? And then last question here. A couple more. I know we're at time, so I am going to move on just to the last slide to leave us up there while we answer these last 2 questions. Tamara asks, what is the best way for L&D professionals to learn AI quickly? Is there a strong program out there that you can all recommend? That's super interesting. Personally, the way that I use AI, I just use AI to learn about itself. I ask it as if it's a team member how I should best take advantage of it. I ask it, can you do this? How should I ask you to do this? How can you write me a prompt that would enable me to use ChatGPT to do this? And just kind of like I would learn about a teammate's capabilities by having conversations with them. That's how I do it with AI. But yeah, to Sean's point, LinkedIn Learning has been instrumental. Very good one. Following LinkedIn AI in L&D groups. I think if you find a few, especially maybe a few thought leaders in this space, maybe a few specific contacts that you could just ask for, people that you know that are into it, follow them, see what they do, and just start sparking that. Again, experimentation, I think, is one of the best ways to do it. It's not going to break anything necessarily. Yeah, good point, Beth. ChatGPT has some settings where you can put in preferences about how you want it to respond. The next session from Open Sesame, I'm curious, they might actually have some suggestions for you, Tamara, about where you can learn AI quickly. And last question for us today, how would you recommend balancing agile or innovative approaches with where we are in our business, which is transitioning from a startup to a more scalable business? Wow, that is really the toughest time for an organization, right? You're in a startup mentality, a startup culture where you have a lot of that kind of agile mentality, innovative approaches already built in. When you try to scale it up, then that gets tricky to hold on to. So I think that is a difficult one. I think everyone's organization is going to be different. My suggestion is to have those conversations with your colleagues, right? Set up ongoing working groups or sitting groups where you're talking about maintaining or defining how your work culture will scale up as you grow. How do you replicate that culture across teams when they're no longer working together really, really closely, maybe like the different partners in the startup were? So my suggestion is co-create it with your coworkers. There really isn't a shortcut. You have to figure out how to do it together, and it's the process that gets you there. Okay, so I think we're at time. We're still getting some really great responses in chat, but I'm going to toss the mic. Let's see, one more note, and then I'll toss the mic over to Emma. Yes, you will get the slides. There are tons of links that I put in the slide deck for you. So many links. So you will have access to the recording. You'll have access to the slide deck. And for sure, reach out on LinkedIn if you have other questions. And thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was a fabulous session. You're getting tons of thank yous and kudos in the chat. Wonderful job. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Up next, we have Louis Knupp and Liza Weissner joining us from Open Sesame for their session, Brains and Bots, the Future of L&D. I hope you all stick around for that session. It begins at the top of the hour. In just a moment, I'm going to end the session, and you can join the next one by going to the Sessions tab in your Zoom events portal. I'll see all y'all at the next one. Have a great day.